So go ahead.
So basically how it started was I've done a lot of internships, and the power of internships in college is that it helps you decide, do you want to work for a big corporate firm? Do you want to work for a nonprofit organization? All of those different levels of things.
Yes.
And so I worked for an architecture firm called Iniad Architects. They're in Manhattan. They're amazing, amazing, amazing. And they have a program called Iniad Lab. And what that basically does is they research the possibilities of architecture and how architecture can respond to different social problems around the world. Mm-hmm. And specifically, they have a program that I think some people have heard of, but you have to be like really in touch with what you do. But they did a program about refugees and how do you integrate refugees back into the cities that they're being moved to instead of putting them in
new cities or back home?
Both. So they did both.
Okay.
So there's some people who are refugees for just some time,
yes,
and then they can go back home. So that's like disaster. And then if it's a war where you really can't go home,
exactly,
how do you integrate refugees back into, how do you integrate them into those new cities instead of putting them in a refugee camp and kind of isolating them?
Exactly.
And through that program, they actually discovered that architecture could respond to such things. And that got me thinking, like, what are the social problems that I'm like really excited about, or the things that I think don't sit well with me, that I feel like there's something I can do, but what is it? And for me, my biggest social problem was access to education. It always has been access to education, because when I look back to where I've come from, the things I've gone through, it's because I've been given access.
Yes.
But how about all those other people who don't have access to education? And for me, because I'm coming from a design lens, what can I do about it? Right? And there's so many ways that people respond to it, but I thought I can do it by responding to architecture. And so one of my classmates, Olivia Haney, she's amazing, amazing, amazing. And she's the reason that actually, I would say, she pushed me beyond what I thought I could do.
Yes.
By doing the Muumba Project. She always had the idea that she wanted to do educational spaces in developing countries, that was sustainable.
So this is her idea, your idea?
So that's an interesting part. So yes, we both have two different ways that we look at, we bring two different things to this project. She is into sustainable structures and how they can be put in developing countries. Okay. Then I come in where I'm like, these sustainable structures can actually give access to education to these kids that have to walk long distances, or they have a cultural obstacle about education. Yes. Maybe some cultures just do not accept it.
Yes.
And so we just have two different lenses that brought us together to do what we now call the Muumba Project.
Okay, so let's talk about what that is.
So the Muumba Project, if we bring it down to the basic.
Yes.
It's a nonprofit organization. And me and Olivia are working with a bunch of entrepreneurs in Uganda and the US to investigate how we could build sustainable structures in communities, borrowing from their culture, their location, and I can go into depth about how all those things will play in.
Yes.
But borrowing from all of that and putting it into an educational space for those communities.
Okay, so I have a million questions right now.
Yes.
Okay, so number one, I want to know what your definition, when you say sustainable, I'm thinking like green, we want to make sure it's good for the earth, or you say we want it to last a very long time. And then I am just super confused how an architecture works into education opportunities. Like
yes.
I don't know. There's no connection for me.
Right.
Yes, you can build a school anywhere. Sure, right. Build a school. But how does an architecture help with opportunity to education?
Right. So I'll talk about the sustainability part first.
Yes.
So when we talk sustainable, we are talking about a building that is not damaging the earth. Okay. Right?
Yes.
But also we're talking about that it should last a long time. So for example, the one that we're working on right now is in Kapchora, and it's a children's center. Kapchora is at the top of a mountain. It's basically really up in the mountains, in the Mount Elgon slopes. And we're looking at
Where is that?
So it's in Uganda, in the northeast.
Okay.
And it's on the slopes of Mount Elgon. So Mbale would be really on the east, but they are more on the northern east side.
I'm going to have a map somewhere because I'm myself not getting it. But yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, and the thing about Kapchora is, one, they're in a place where water is it is in excess. They just don't get it from the places that we know water can be. So the water in Kapchora comes from the top of the mountain coming down.
Okay.
And no one really knows the source of this water, but it does come down. It does come down.
Okay.
And this place actually has been known to have landslides because of that.
Oh, wow.
Because they get a lot of water coming down from the mountain.
Goodness. Okay.
And so because of that, they have erosion.
Yes.
And the
Mudslide.
topsoil is really just maybe 2 feet.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about something that is
I don't know how
unstable.
you're going to build a school there.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
my
most people are
goodness.
just like, how are you going to do that? But then the thing is, because bedrock is so close, it makes a perfect foundation for a building. So for architects, it's like, this is the best news ever. For other people, it's like, no, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But so we're looking at it in that way. So that we have the opportunity that we're next to bedrock.
Yes.
There is this water that's coming from somewhere that we could use, or at least in a way we can store this water so the community can use it in some way. And so this educational space we're thinking about, we wanted it to use local materials. Okay. So we're thinking, whenever you think of a building, and this has happened in Uganda quite a bit, people start to order materials from South Africa and from all these other developed countries to bring it in, because for some reason it's gonna work better.
It's because it works other places. They assume it's going to work in Uganda just as good as it works.
Exactly.
Yes.
But for us, we're like, yes, it could work well, but one, it's expensive.
There you go.
Two, is it what is appropriate for them in that community, right? If they for us, we're like, if this is an educational space we're making now.
Yes.
But we want them to be able to replicate this architecture. We want them to be able to do it. The architecture doesn't have to stop in a school. It could be a community center. It could be someone's home. It could be all these things. And we're borrowing from their architecture typology that already exists.
Yes.
In Kapchora. And for us, this building, which when we release it, you will see how it looks like. But we're basing it on the fact that we can use rammed earth to build this building.
I don't know what that means.
So rammed earth is basically, trying to find an easy way to describe it, but it's basically when you get soil and put it under so much pressure that it makes a block. Like
cement, like when you build it,
it would be pure earth, basically, that you're mixing together to make kind of like a paste, and then you pressurize it into various blocks, and it would basically become really, really hard. And it would be a very good building structure. Okay. And the good thing with that is the soil's available. On the site, we also talk about the fact that people here have worked with brick. And by brick, we mean like the red brick that they make from like the swamps and all of that. Yes. So when they look at rammed earth, it's just a little step forward. But they can still work with it. The
concept is the same.
Exactly.
Yes.
They can work with it. So we're not gonna look for craftsmen from all these other areas. We're looking at local people and having them come and construct with us this building.
So they can take
and they can replicate it when we leave.
That's amazing.
At some point. So for us, it's so important to borrow from all these different things that this community might not look at as opportunities or as strong things about them, and bringing them into a space that they can celebrate always, knowing it exists, but can also look to and always replicate into different.
I love this so much. I love literally every single part about this, because I know just in some random class years ago, I was studying just how thousands of people, millions, hundreds of millions of people here in America have good intentions. And I'll say in America, but across the Western world has good intentions. Yeah. And they always want to help people out. Third world countries and Asia and Africa, the whole nine.
Right.
And a lot of the times they do exactly what you were saying not to do. Mm-hmm. They want to send money, they want to send things, they want to build homes, build school, the whole nine. They want to do it all and help, but they have good intentions, but the way they plan it, the process, the way they go about it is horrible, because they do everything the way they do it in Newton, Massachusetts, and they just plop that into Uganda, and it's like, great, it works for a week, 2 weeks, and then no one uses it, they can't replicate it, it ends up being useless, and it just ends up taking space and taking money out of the situation.
Yes.
The way you're going about it is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right. So thank you for doing that. Everyday Hero and more, so much more.